Okay, word, I'm in. Now my eyes are gonna be all red. A gift to the movie gods. Just capitalism. And just wants to kill her baby. Hey, what's up you guys? How's it going? So today I'm gonna be reviewing the movie called Mom and Dad. This movie just got released on Hulu and it completely flew under my radar when it came out in 2018. I actually don't remember seeing any advertisements or any promotion or anything regarding this movie because if I had, let me tell you, I would have seen it in theaters, but I just found out about it because it was on Hulu. So as I was browsing Hulu, I came upon this movie and I saw, oh, it's starring Nicolas Cage and Selma Blair. Okay, word, I'm in. So I'm just gonna dive into the background of the movie for a little bit and then I'll get into my review and then I'll get into spoilers. So this movie came out in January of 2018 and it got a 75% on Rotten Tomatoes. It's also written, directed, and produced by Brian Taylor, whom I have not previously heard of. But what happens in this movie? Surprisingly, with a runtime of just 83 minutes, a teenage girl and her little brother try to survive a wild 24 hours during which a mass hysteria of unknown origins causes parents to turn violently against their own children. So I'm gonna talk about the actors and the journalism and stuff surrounding the film because it kind of recontextualizes the whole thing. And I just want you to hear this before we get into the review because I think it's really important what the actors and the director think of this film. Now my eyes are gonna be all red. So Nicolas Cage in an interview actually said that this is his favorite movie that he's done in the last 10 years. And he also called it a gift to the movie gods. And honestly, I have to agree with him. I love this movie so much. I'm gonna get into it later, but like, you just have to know that I completely agree with him. This is indeed a gift to the movie gods. Now we know that Nicolas Cage is pretty chaotic and his role in this movie is completely insane. And the director, Brian Taylor, actually mentioned that working with Nicolas Cage is like working with the weather. He is an unpredictable force. But in an interview that Nicolas Cage did separately from everybody else, he said this: "Aside from the homicidal aspect of my character, what I related to most was the idea that I am no longer what I once was," Cage confesses. Brent had a very successful life in high school, he was successful with his girlfriends, and he had a wild, fun time. All of a sudden, he's just this sort of boring, generic dad with golf clubs, holding on to his beloved Firebird, his salary has gone down, and he doesn't look as good as he used to look. I think it's something we all go through. So that's sort of the background where Nicolas Cage came from playing this role. I think that this is also a very domestic first world issue and it's not really important within the context of global issues and things like that. But it is really interesting social commentary and I honestly think that that might be the root of a lot of familial issues. One other tidbit of where Nicolas Cage drew from for this role is The Shining, actually. He loved the performance of Jack Nicholson in The Shining and the concepts are vastly different between these movies, but the plot is actually a little bit similar, what with parents trying to kill their children and whatnot. And that's super cool because Jack Nicholson is one of my favorite actors. His role in The Shining was phenomenal, and so I think it's really cool that Nicolas Cage drew from that for this role in Mom and Dad. So if you want to watch the interview that I watched with the actors and with Brian Taylor, the director, I will link that down below. And if you want to read the article with the interview with Nick Cage just by himself, I will link that below as well. But now I'm going to get more into the stylistic nature of the film. The cinematography is honestly unreal. I loved it. Just stylistically, it's so beautiful. And I think that it really matches with the sort of retro-ish soundtrack and combined it made a very, very stylish aesthetic. It's also edited in a pretty unpredictable and non-linear way, which I actually like because I don't think that it's always necessary to tell a story in a linear narrative. I think that it's really interesting when you get taken out of certain parts of the film and you explore different memories with the characters because it recontextualizes the moment and gives it a whole different meaning. So for example, in this film, I already told you the synopsis, so it's not really a spoiler, but if there's a moment, you know, where a parent is attacking a child and then it flashes back to said parent and child eating ice cream together, just having a chill day, not only does it give you a break, you take a beat from the super intense action, but you also learn more of the backstory of these characters and it makes it that much more insane that the parent is trying to kill their child. Okay, so aside from the cinematography and editing and whatnot, I want to talk about the acting a little bit because for the first maybe quarter of this movie or so, I felt like I was watching a movie that was written and directed by robots, but hear me out. I think that it might have been done purposefully to show that people who live extremely domesticated lifestyles sort of fall into this robotic pattern of just doing whatever society expects them to, you know, whatever is normal. So they sort of stop living as themselves and turn into these robotic versions of themselves, just doing whatever it is that society expects them to do. Because let me just walk you through the characters a little bit and then I think you'll understand what I'm saying. So Nicolas Cage's character, Brent, the father, is the, you know, slightly checked out dad that likes to drink and he likes to go to work basically as an escape from his domestic home life. And then Selma Blair's character, Kendall, is the always on duty mom, you know, wakes up, does her yoga, drinks her green juice, just takes care of the kids basically. And then their teen daughter is very stereotypical. She just loves to be on her phone. She just wants to be left alone, doesn't really want anything to do with her parents. And then the youngest son is just young enough to still really, really love his mommy and daddy. So a very, very typical family. So it's realistic and yet these stereotypical but extremely accurate depictions of the modern family is really trippy because I grew up in a similar sort of domestic household and I don't know if it's the cinematography that makes everything feel so surreal, but it just doesn't feel like real life and yet it's so accurate to what most domestic households are like. But it's almost as if it's an alternate dimension of suburbia that's actually hell. I don't know how to describe it. I think I just really, really appreciate the stylistic nature of this film and what it does and the environment that it creates, and so I really hope that you watch it because then you'll understand what I'm talking about. But by the way, when I say that the characters are robotic, I'm not saying that the acting is bad. The acting is truly phenomenal because after the first quarter of the movie or so, when the action starts, they completely break out of their robotic characters and it's truly some of the best horror acting I've ever seen. And I know that it's a dark comedy, but I really think that it adds to their performances because not only is it actually very suspenseful and scary, but it's also funny too, and the acting really delivers. This movie would not be what it is without the actors that they had. So speaking to that, it is really one of the most stressful movies ever. And I think it's the way that they build suspense and just the general nature of the plot because children are extremely vulnerable and when their own parents, who should be biologically wired to protect them, are trying to kill them, there's really no one else left to protect these children. So the suspense is built just perfectly. And then the payoff is just equally as amazing. So I also want to talk about the concepts and the social commentary in this movie. And I'm just sort of going to list them right now because I'm going to get more into detail with them later when I get into spoilers. So this movie not only makes commentary on things like gun control, but also verbal abuse, domestic violence, the fact that not everyone is meant to be a parent, and even capitalism. Okay, so now that you know the concepts that I am going to be exploring, I really hope that you pause this and go watch the movie or that you've already seen it because now I'm going to be getting into some spoilers and talking about moments that messed with my head. So there are certain things in life that we don't want to happen and that we don't want to witness, but the point of horror movies is to safely watch those things happen. But even though I knew that I was watching a movie, when I was watching Mom and Dad, I did not feel safe and there were some things I really didn't want to witness. And they took it up to the line, I think. Maybe slightly crossed it, but I think it was really just the perfect amount. And they showed you some pretty crazy stuff, so I'm gonna talk about that right now. For one thing, the concept behind this movie, dealing with bioweaponry. This is something I don't feel has been totally explored in cinema yet, especially not something as specific as this, where the particular bioweaponry is meant to target parents and literally change their brain chemistry to want to kill their children. I just applaud the team of people that made this movie because it is such a taboo subject and yet they pulled it off so well, and I think it's honestly so relatable and the comedy really works as well. So just, there was one scene that was almost a little bit too much for me. This is one moment where they took it up to the line and just slightly crossed it a little bit. But Selma Blair's character, Kendall, well, Kendall's sister in the film is going into labor and she has her baby. But right when her baby is born, she starts to try to break its neck and they're all trying to get the baby out of her grasp and like she's squeezing this baby so tight and Selma Blair finally, I keep saying Selma Blair, it's Kendall. Kendall's character finally grabs the baby from her and she's trying to get away and her sister just keeps literally fighting off the 3 or 4 nurses that are in there and just wants to kill her baby. It was insane. That was one moment where I really almost had to look away, but I didn't, and luckily I didn't because nothing ended up happening to the baby. Thank God. There was one moment that was almost a little bit too much for me, and it was the reveal with the house cleaner. If you've seen the movie, you know, but for anyone that hasn't, this is what happened. So the house cleaner has a daughter that comes to work with her in the house, and when the teenage daughter and her friend come in, they are speaking to the house cleaner and she's mopping up the floor, but they can't see what she's mopping because she's behind the island in the kitchen. And then at some point in the middle of the conversation, she lifts the mop up and it is blood red, just soaked. So what is implied is that the house cleaner brutally slaughtered her daughter. And I think this was done so artfully because they didn't show the daughter dying, they didn't even show her body, they didn't even show the puddle of blood, they literally just showed the mop full of her blood. And that was enough for me. Okay, so those were some of the craziest moments. Now I'm gonna get deeper into the concepts that I mentioned earlier. So for one thing, I think that they definitely made commentary about gun safety. There's a moment in the film where the youngest son found the box containing Brent's gun in it, and he just starts to play with it because when you're a little kid, you don't know. You don't really grasp the concept of mortality or, you know, guns and killing and stuff like that. Which I think really shines a spotlight on the fact that we should not keep guns in our household, especially when you have young children. Plus also, when you live such a domestic lifestyle, yeah, you might want it for protection, but what's really gonna happen? Like the most likely thing that's gonna happen is that your child is gonna find it and play with it, and a big mistake might happen. Another thing that I really liked was it kind of exposed the toxic relationships between parents and children, especially in these domestic type of households. I feel like I've said domestic a lot. But essentially in the end of the film, the roles are actually reversed because the children are just begging their parents to hear them out and just tell them that they love them and they don't want them to kill them. And the parents just like repeat phrases that the children had said prior. So with the teenage daughter, she always said stuff like, whatever. So when they're begging with their parents, her mom literally hits her with the whatever. And I like that because I think most of us were horrible when we were teenagers, and it was really good for me to self-reflect on that and just remember to never act like that again. Because if my parents treated me like that, oh my god. So this film really exposes toxic family issues in white suburbia. And speaking to that, there's a moment when Nick Cage has just finished building a pool table and his wife comes down and she's like, can you afford this? Why do we have a pool table? And then he just goes absolutely crazy and destroys it. Also, when Nicolas Cage was destroying the pool table and just screaming, and you just are hearing all the sounds of him smashing the pool table and everything, they show little shots of their decorations that say live, laugh, love. And I feel like that's really exposing people that have the live, laugh, love little signs in their house, because the people that have those signs and feel the need to prove that they're living and laughing and loving are in fact not living and laughing and loving. And then he's going on and on about how he peaked in his career and how he's making a lot less money now and how he thought he'd be in a way different place in his life at this age. And I thought, okay, they're getting real about when you peak in your life and how it doesn't really mean anything if you're not still moving upwards. And that brings me to the topic of capitalism. Through ideological state apparatuses like public schools, they really push the idea of the American dream. If you work hard, you'll move your way up in the world and eventually you'll be rich, right? But the idea of this is really an illusion because let's think about it. Less than 2% of people in America make more than $100,000 a year. And $100,000 a year, that's not really even considered rich, right? You're just well off, you know, comparatively with the millionaires and billionaires and, you know, those people. So when people fall into these domestic lifestyles and they're not living the life that they imagine, they become really resentful, not only to their partner, but to themselves especially, and also to their kids. Which brings me to the next topic. Not everyone should be parents. If you have kids, you won't be able to be yourself anymore, and you won't be able to do literally thousands of things that you could have done prior to having a child. I'm definitely not speaking as a parent, but I just witnessed it, you know, in this film, and I'm sure that it's pretty realistic to a lot of familial situations. And it's just tough because when parents resent their children, it's not the kid's fault. They didn't ask to be born, you know? So those concepts in the movie all really worked for me. Of course, that's just my interpretation of the commentary that they were making. It could mean something completely different to anyone else that watches it, but I loved what I gained from the film. And it's really awesome because I am a film student and I love film theory. I love psychology, I love sociology, and so digging into films and their meanings is just It's my favorite. I'm gonna wrap it up soon, but just to talk a little bit about the end of the movie, they really leave it on a cliffhanger. There's no real resolution except that for the time being, the parents are under control and tied up. And I kind of want a sequel. I know it doesn't need one, but I would love it if we just picked up right where it left off. The kids found some convoluted but intense way to reverse what was going on in their heads. And then as a family, they sort of went out to try and fight the larger problem. I don't know, but it also makes sense that it ended there on kind of a cliffhanger, because what do we do about family situations that end up like this? Divorce? Finding a new career path? I mean, there's just a lot of things logistically that you cannot do when you have a family to think about, so I think that the ending was also a good metaphorical representation about that stuff as well. Okay, so I know that this has been a long review, but I loved this movie and I had a lot to say and there was just a lot to dig into. So I really hope that you enjoyed it. Thanks for sticking it out to the end if you did. And if you did, please drop a like. It really helps my channel so much. And if you're new, hit that subscribe button and hit the notification bell, because I post every single Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 5 o'clock p.m. But if you hit the notification bell, you won't have to remember that. You'll just get notified whenever I post. Hi, I just remembered that I forgot to mention that I'm posting today on my vlog channel at 6 p.m. and I post every single Monday at 6 p.m. over there. So definitely subscribe. I will link that down below. Today's video, we went to the driving range and I attempted to play a little bit of golf, which was just, yeah, so definitely check that out. Okay, well, I hope that you enjoyed and I really hope that I catch you in the next one. Bye!